When I hear about tiny, infinitesimal amounts of biological material to deliver these outsized outcomes and convict people and give all these amazing results for prosecutors, are you thinking what I'm thinking? The rise and fall of Theranos, helmed by Elizabeth Holmes, subject of multiple documentaries and Hulu shows. This is a company that built its supposed fortune, its house of cards fortune, on the Edison device, a tiny proprietary vial that can extract a drop of blood and conduct all of these amazing blood tests, seemingly an infinite number of blood tests. They obviously committed a litany of mistakes, not to mention crimes, but they did get one thing right, and I'm going to come back to that one thing in just a moment. They hit the ground running and partnered with Walgreens and basically made their testing facilities, their testing vials available, all of these locations of Walgreens all across the United States. In 2015, there was a Wall Street Journal investigation. This Edison device is a sham. And in fact, the vast majority of tests that it claims to be able to do is done from traditional vials of blood drawn from the arm, not the few drops drawn by a finger prick. And in fact, many of the tests that they were doing were just repurposed tests from big manufacturers that were done traditionally. It would be like a restaurant winning a Michelin star and you find out that all their food is takeaway from another restaurant down the road, which has robots doing all the cooking. In 2016, Theranos was forced to void 2 years of blood tests after these revelations come to light. Holmes is banned from running labs for 2 years, and then the lawsuits begin. Walgreens sues Theranos, layoffs, failed lab inspections, settlements, criminal fraud charges, and so on and so forth. We've seen this show before. Across these litany of sins, mistake, and fraud, what is that one thing that Theranos got right? Tapped into people's fears. The fear of the blood test. The fear of the needle, the fear of seeing the blood trickle out from your arm. That was the original sin that catalyzed all of it. You could talk about this to anyone from a toddler to a grandma, and all of them would be united in saying that's quite an unpleasant process. And if you can tap into that insecurity, you could raise a lot of interest from the VC crowd, because that is an existential threat that we all feel in our gut. And this is reflected very clearly in this article from Quora. It's really quite eye-opening. How many blood tests can be carried out with just one drop of blood? When they take a blood test, why did it take so many tubes of blood? How can I prevent fainting after getting a blood test done? Since only one drop of blood is needed for testing, why do they always take a vial of my blood? Do they sell the extra amount? Tapped into this deep-seated fear people have around blood testing. If you have a device that overcomes this, there is huge fortune to be made, even if it's a complete fraud. To answer some of these questions, I really like this article from The Conversation. How do blood tests work? A medical laboratory scientist explained a pathway from blood draw to diagnosis and treatment. The first step involves getting your blood drawn through a practice known as phlebotomy, and a phlebotomist or a nurse inserts a needle into a vein, maybe puts a tourniquet on your arm to really force the blood to come out, and collects a blood specimen. And the reason that they need so many tubes of blood, all of these different tests that your doctor may have ordered needs a different biological or chemical condition. A test used to diagnose anemia. It requires blood to be collected in a chemical that prevents the blood from clotting. But if you're getting a test for a clotting disorder, their tube has to contain an anticoagulant that's different from the one in the anemia tube. Sometimes you have to incubate blood in the absence of oxygen. So again, that's a different tube altogether. You need different vials for different tests because every test has a different reaction. Your doctor usually will ask for a blood test, not just for one single thing, but usually for lots of different types of things. There are some tests that you can do that only need one drop of blood. The finger prick blood test for blood glucose if you're a diabetic. The much more accurate way of assessing your blood sugar is the HbA1c test, which is done by collecting a big vial of blood and assesses your blood sugar over a 3-month period rather than the instantaneous reading you're taking at any point of the day. So even the tests that only need a drop of blood, they are just the quick in the field version of the tests that then needs further validation and confirmation by these way more detailed blood tests. How Theranos' faulty blood tests got to market. Normally, medical devices are the most highly regulated products. That blood testing kit that Theranos was selling did not match that legal definition and therefore was not subject to the same regulation of normal medical devices. The Theranos test fell under a category called a laboratory-developed test, which is an in vitro diagnostic test that is designed, manufactured, and used within single laboratories and not within hospitals. FDA does not enforce pre-market reviews of this type of test, and therefore Theranos was not required to have its test evaluated by regulators before offering them to patients, and this is a real red flag flag in the loophole being accessible by Theranos is also accessible to other kinds of testing kits. Obviously, you don't want to design a testing kit that's only used under very clean in vitro laboratory conditions. You want your diagnosis to be able to use out in the field so that can help as many people as quickly as possible. This is not a problem that's going to go away anytime soon, and you would have seen headlines around blood tests for Alzheimer's disease detecting certain plaques and proteins that we talked about on a previous episode. We hear about all of these cancer blood tests trying to pick up biomarkers for a long time, and to begin with, they do have to conduct these tests in a controlled laboratory environment on a set number of samples where they know what the outcome is going to be until it can be useful in the clinic, useful in the hospital, without that extra careful controlled environment being in place. It may be able to skirt the regulations that the FDA puts into place, but it ultimately won't be able to impact and improve healthcare sector and health outcomes for patients until it meets that burden of proof.